Welcome back to Fast Market here on Schwab Network. I'm Diane King Hall alongside Kevin Hinks over at the CBO. Time now for our cash tag segment. For that, we want to bring in our next guest, and that is Andy Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio. All right, we're taking a look at Chipotle today. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. So Chipotle, the shares have had a very difficult years, and we continue to have this conversation about the K-shaped economy. You would think that consumers would still be going to Chipotle, but it looks like there has been some pullback in general. What does your data show us?
Yeah, it really shows Chipotle as kind of a unique outlier loser in the fast casual space or the fast food space. If we look at web visits overall, Shake Shack absolutely dominating. They've embraced a lot of Bitcoin. They've embraced beef tallow into their meals, and they've had a nice surge in both web traffic and same store sales traffic. Everybody pretty much up at McDonald's, Shake Shack, all the way down until you get to Chipotle, which is negative. Never a good sign when you're the single outlier in an industry. And I think a lot of what's happened is, Chipotle's demographic definitely leans younger. And I think eventually just people started realizing, wait a minute, I'm paying $14, $16 for a burrito. I remember when this was $8 or $9, and at that point, Chipotle becomes pretty easy to move away from. And I think that's the big story here is that an entire generation of consumers are kind of moving away from the company, and that's the exact sector of people that built that company up. And so, millennials, whatever you want to call them, the younger generation, pulling back in their spending overall, and Chipotle, one of those first to go, because I think the other big story here that we see over and over again in our data is that people are complaining. They feel like they're just not getting as much for their money. It's not just the price has gone up, but they feel like sometimes the portions have gone down. And so, Chipotle just not the value that it once was.
Andy, looking over your visits chart, year over year change, a lot of this I get, and a lot of this is a head scratcher for me personally. Now, if consumers are worrying about prices, I get why McDonald's is up 29%, right? I get why Chipotle might be down based on that because their price is fairly high. A Shake Shack being up 29%, they're not exactly giving away those. That is not a low price option. And here's my question. The number one, Steak and Shake, are they competing with price or are they just innovating better? Why are they so? I get why McDonald's, we covered them a week or so ago, and your data was accurate that they're the low price point. People are going there if they're trading down. But some of the other ones are a head scratcher. What is it price? Or is it something other than price, Andy? I guess is what I'm asking. Because a couple of the ones on the top, those aren't the cheapest options either, as you know.
Yeah, no, they're not. Steak and Shake's a great outlier as well because they've completely, it's more of a story of a brand turnaround. Steak and Shake was kind of left for dead a year ago. So up 73% is off of a very, very low bar. And what they've done is they've embraced some really interesting and powerful kind of counterculture trends. With using beef tallow, they've attached themselves to the Make America Healthy Again movement. They've attached themselves to Bitcoin. You can check out using Bitcoin. So they're going after these small but powerful consumer groups that have really rallied behind them. And in Chipotle's case, it's kind of just the opposite. I think that their customer, who again is the younger generation, who again is looking to cut back on their restaurant or fast food spending, feels abandoned by Chipotle because they have raised their prices so much. There's a lack of perceived innovation on the menu. There's a lack of perceived value. A lot of these other companies have done a really good job, McDonald's especially, and Starbucks to some extent, of providing some value-based options on the menu for people that can't spend as much as they maybe were 6, 12 months ago.
You make great points earlier, because a lot of times I see online people recently questioning what you're getting from Chipotle in terms of the bang for the buck, and the inconsistency when you go from location to location. So asking the question, is it worth it? I also, just a quick point, I'm sure the elder millennials appreciate you calling them young, since at the upper end of the spectrum, they're turning 45 soon. So let me ask you this, Andy. You all often give earnings scores. When you look across Chipotle, what's the earnings score that you would give it?
Yeah, it would still be negative. I think they've still got a lot to prove. Neutral to bearish. I think Chipotle has an incredible amount to prove to its customer base. And really the biggest tell of the whole thing that, quite frankly, we missed this connection was when you see DoorDash struggling, then it's obvious that Chipotle is doing terribly, because that's probably the number one thing that the younger generations are ordering on DoorDash. And so as DoorDash goes, I think Chipotle goes. They really need to add some value and bring back perceived value to their menu and their offerings in order to win customers back. Once they do, once they stop, this same store sales bleed, I think this is a great company with great upside, but we're just not there yet.
Andy, one last thing before we let you go. I can't help but notice Starbucks up 14%, Chipotle down 17%. Is there a Brian Nickel effect in those two companies? One going in one direction, one going in the other? Or is Brian Nickel further ahead in fixing Starbucks than how he left Chipotle?
I think in terms of making a graceful exit, you could not have picked better timing than the way Brian Nichols left Chipotle. Starbucks still has massive problems, but I do think that they've got the right guy at the head of the ship, and so we'll see. But they're making steps in the right direction, and it's showing in LikeFolio data in terms of web visits and overall traffic. So, I think Starbucks might be where Chipotle wants to be a year from now.
All right, that's a good point. So we will see how things play out for Starbucks, especially over the next year, given that they also said they need a little bit more time. Andy, thank you so much for the look across the landscape of Chipotle, fast casual in general and beyond. That's Andy Swan, co-founder of LikeFolio.